recording? Yes, perfect. Okay. I'm going to start this morning's meeting. So welcome to the Australian FHIR Work Group call, which is a hybrid meeting this morning, and is part of the Trans-Tasman Symposium and Connectathon event that's currently going on over the next 3 days. I'm temporarily chairing, and Stephen Chu will take over after I've run through these next set of introductions. I'd like to acknowledge and pay respects to the past, present and future traditional custodians and elders of Australia, and the continuation of the cultural, spiritual and educational practices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. I'd like to advise that throughout today and over actually the next 3 days, there'll be some photos and videos taken. If you don't want your image taken as part of that, please go speak to the HL7 AU staff. That's Emma. And if you're concerned about that, you can come chat to me and I'll connect you to Emma if you don't know who Emma is, about making sure that your image is not part of that. This meeting is recorded, as are all work group meetings, which is part of the HL7 commitment to open standards process, where we record all of our work group discussions and decision making and make those available. So I'd like to call out here that this is a hybrid meeting. So we've got some good attendance in person, and thank you very much for coming. And this is also available online for those of you who can join us. This is a different time than what we usually meet at. What we'd like to do is have this be run as one meeting, as in we're all in one room as much as possible. What that will mean is we'll ask that when you have questions or when you want to contribute to a discussion, you raise your hand. And so from a Teams perspective, that will be raising your hand using the Teams functionality. And we have both Josh and Jamie who will monitor that. And in the room, we'll ask you to raise your hand. So physically, raise your hand and we'll work out who is first in order. And then the chair will call your name when it's your turn to speak. When you're speaking, both for the people in the room and for those online, can you call out your name first? This is a little bit different because when we do the online calls, of course, we can tell who you are because there's, when you've signed into Zoom, that says who you are. But in this case, we might not know whether you're in the room or online. So it'd be great if you could just say who you are and then ask the question or contribute to the discussion. And because it's a hybrid meeting, when we're making decisions or voting, we're going to use Menti. So we're going to do that really soon. So you're going to want your phones or your laptops ready to go to menti.com. I've got a code there, but there is a slide and we're going to do a practice run of this because we will be at least voting on approving the minutes in this meeting. So you're going to need to get ready to do the Menti content. And the other thing is, for those of you online, and remember there are people in the room and they haven't joined the meeting. So the chat isn't being monitored. So if there's something you want to contribute, whether that's a question or a discussion point, please raise your hand so that that can be understood by everybody, not just the people online. Which brings me to the decision making. And Heath, do you have a question? Let's microphone you. It's happening. Just
I
yes.
just went to that Minty and it's actually next door's Minty.
That seems very unlikely because I created it this morning.
Okay. Slides from.
Let me go to it. So the FHIR Work Group mentee for today And the Menti code has changed, indeed, from 3 hours ago when I created it, which is just what happens, isn't it? It is. Could someone post, either Josh or Jamie, could you please post in the chat for those people who are online, um, that Menti code? And I'll put up now a new QR. Here we go. So you can also use this QR code to join. And this is a practice. So as we go through decision making, including approval of minutes or anything else, we operate under Robert's rules. And what that practically means is we undertake majority decision making. There is a motion made by someone. And it's very important that we understand who's motioning and what the motion is, like approval of minutes, for example, and that someone seconds it. And then we put that to majority vote. And in this case, because it's a hybrid meeting, we're going to be undertaking Menti. So we expect everybody in the room to have joined via Menti and everybody online to have joined via Menti and to be voting and to vote either affirmative, which means you are for the current motion, negative, you're against the current motion, or abstain. You may abstain for various reasons. They may be that you aren't feeling comfortable that you know enough to make a decision. It may be that you are unconcerned about the topic under discussion and have no stake in the game either way. There are a whole number of reasons you might vote abstain. But we do ask that everybody online and everybody in the room votes, whether that is affirmative, negative, or abstain. So looking at this, we don't have all the voters. So I really must ask people, since this is the practice, to get onto Menti and contribute your vote. There are 11 people in the room and 2 people online. And so we are missing two voters. No, I don't count because I'm currently chairing. Stephen and I will swap roles very shortly, where I will go to be an active voter. But there are 13 active voters. We've now got 12, so very close. All right, we'll accept that. That's all but one person. If you're having trouble, as in you can't access Menti or anything like that, please pop your hand up or just speak up if we've not spotted your hand so that we can make sure this is solved, because this is an important part of what we do is community decision making and making sure that you're a part of this. So I'm going to stop this one. Okay, so that's how decision making is going to go. And at this point, since Stephen's here, I'm actually going to hand over to Stephen to keep chairing the meeting. And I'll hand over, you don't have to use this, you can actually use a normal mic instead of the contraption, but it's up to you.
Continue to use that. Into the wrong room. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the FHIR Work meeting. All right, can everyone hear me? Good, thank you. All right, minutes for approval. So we have that one. I no, I don't think that we have any out. Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to do. So there are two previous minutes of meetings for approval. One is the February and the 26th, and the other one is March the 12th. Now we have not sent out email notices to the members at large about those 2 minutes for preview and therefore for approval. So in the absence of that action item, so we propose that we defer the meeting minutes to the next meeting, which will be the online meeting for our members to have a chance to review, and then we'll approve that. Do we have anyone raising hands? No. Okay. All right. So that's dispense of the first action item. I will defer that. Second item is updates, actions from previous meetings.
Hello.
Thank you, Brett.
Hello. Yes. So we had an action to bring an extended coverage resource poll. Yeah. So that. Yeah, so that happened, and hopefully I'll ping people through the Connectathon event to answer that poll as well. So that went up on Zulip, and it's pretty simple. It's just saying which elements do you actually use. Yep, so there's actually a list of all the elements and options in a FHIR resource just to get a picture of which elements people are actually applying. And this is to kind of help us assess what we should have some opinion about and need to talk about. So yeah, we'll get some detail on that. And I think I had below that is another, I think I had another question at the end, just more a general question about any notable things on that usage. So oh yes, any. Yeah, so yeah, what I'm saying is really feel free to comment on your usage is probably what we want to know. Yep, so that was it. So that's gone up, but I'll probably ping people in the room through the Connectathon event as well to see if they can comment on that. I know some of the people indicated that they had implemented coverage, so I'll be talking to them as well.
We got a lot of really good response on the first FHIR Work Group coverage poll. I wonder if we should, following what we did last time, send an email to the different work groups, because there was quite a lot of interest across requesting and the core TDG as well as the FHIR Work Group to notify them. I think that might be what we want to do to, I guess, yeah, to get the consistent response. So I see you nodding, Brett. Can we note an action in this set of minutes? And against you, Brett, I think, Landon, you're comfortable with us, like as core co-chair, sending that out, and Michael, that makes sense to you. So I think we've got the other TDG co-chairs going, yeah, we're happy for that notification to go out. Cool. Okay.
Sorry, we've lost audio online.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Danielle. I just can't hear Stephen.
Okay, we might need to, you might need to take this mic instead, Stephen, and we can share one in the room.
All right. Sorry about the audio. So can everyone hear me now? Oh, good. All right. So the second action item is healthcare services poll.
So, Danielle here, could you click on that, Stephen? So I wanted to highlight for this group that what's come through an AU Core TDG really recently. So just click on that link by tapping.
One thing, hang on.
I can tap. I know, I hate working with other people's. Oh, it's not a touch screen.
Okay.
It would be great if it was a touch screen, but it's not. It's just tap it.
I did, and
Or right click, and then we can just do that because yay. Okay, so out of the last AU Core TDG meeting, the agency has submitted a proposal to add a new profile to the AU Core IG in R2. So we'd already agreed in December last year to do medication statement and related person. And those are pretty much done, though dosage is being talked about today. But the rest of the scope of R2 was really looking to be driven by community priorities. And the agency has raised that from their perspective for Health Connect, which is a major program in the agency, they would like to see an AU Core healthcare service profile being published in AU Core R2. And so as part of that, they're going to hold a breakout tomorrow, but they've also done a poll to put out to the community to really gather some understanding of who's implementing things, is what's in base sufficient, because there is an AU base healthcare service. Are there any additional requirements? Where are people going to help the agency form the proposal to come back to the AU Core TDG around an AU Core healthcare service profile proposal, basically? And I wanted to highlight for this group that has just been put out from the agency. I think maybe Friday last week, or either way, it's been like really recent that this has just come out. And it would be great if people in this group could respond to that as well. We've already got Magentus and MediRecords who have replied to that, but it would be, I think, really beneficial because healthcare service, like practitioner roles and patients, are really across so many different healthcare settings and so many different use cases. If we were looking at that in the FHIR Work Group, as well as what I think e-requesting and Core is doing. So yeah, I just put that on our agenda to highlight that work's going on, and I think that we should be contributing to it.
so we're going to send out emails, or sorry, we already have sent out emails. Yeah.
I think we should send out an email like the coverage one to let every group know that there's work that is looking to expand upon healthcare service and define some rules in Australia from a conformance perspective. Yeah.
So for the responding, are we expecting it from the perspectives of Health Connect, or are we expecting from the community at large in terms of their requirements?
I think it needs to be the community at large. If it's going to AU Core, it has to serve Health Connect, but it has to serve everybody else as well. So I think that the agency is pretty clear on what they need for Health Connect, and what we need to feed into that discussion is what the rest of the community needs, and make sure that Core is serving all those different stakeholders.
Great, thank you. So I think we know the scope for the emails that we want to ask of the community, so that's great. Any questions from the group, and also any questions from our colleagues online?
Oh, just who is actioned with this?
Well, I'll take that action. We'll put that against Danielle. Since Brett, you're taking the coverage action, I presume we'll, we won't make it all on you. I mean, I saw a hand up there, and if you want to do it, I am very happy to pass that action to you.
So Brett, are you taking on
Yeah?
the action?
That I will do it.
Brilliant. Wonderful. Thank you.
That's called division of labor among the coaches. Pretty good. All right. All right. Any other questions from those colleagues in the room or those online? I think I've lost the agenda. Is it going back? Yep. There we are. All right. Updates. The next one, testing UI from Spark. Who is taking on that? That's you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So I wanted to call out a sparked thing. We don't often announce sparked things in the FHIR Work Group. But I wanted to, let me go to a page that is helpful for this. A lot of the work that's being undertaken at the moment in FHIR is being run through the Sparked Accelerator. And I wanted to highlight for this group as well that there's an EOI that is currently out there. And what is being proposed is that in addition to the connectathons, which are, in my view, a kind of irreplaceable set of activities over several days that happen maybe 3 times a year, is that Sparked, as the accelerator who's looking after core patient summary and e-requesting at the moment, is trying to understand if there's any interest in the community in undertaking some dedicated testing events. And what these are both testing asynchronously, so offline, and also looking at some one-day events that are combined. So one-day smaller events than the connectathons, which are 2-day events, and looking at testing across in that one day all of these specifications and potentially other things like smart forms or smart app launch and how that feeds into the use cases, and having that kind of one-day commitment to come in and have a set of the senior kind of FHIR ID editors and the architects, as well as a whole bunch of vendors in there in the room to do a lot of the hands-on kind of development type thing and exposure. We did some of those last year. Let's share my screen. Share screen. Does that work? Perfect. There it is. There's the EOI. So that's what we're talking about, and what we're trying to gauge interest in, because there was quite a bit last year, and that actually worked out really well. And we got a lot of feedback from the people who attended those events that they would do it again, and they found that really, really valuable. And this is a different thing to connectathons. Connectathons are an amazing experience, and hopefully those people who are here today will be here over the next 2 days, that are this kind of really broad group that looks across policy, and there are a whole number of breakouts. And the testing events are kind of this different sort of much smaller experience with a great number of experts in the room to kind of lead you through things and connect, especially if you've never done this before or this is your first introduction to the standard. And I think that the real purpose of this early EOI is to understand, is anyone interested in doing that? The Connectathon events are out there and they are fantastic, and we encourage everybody to come to those. But is there any appetite for having these one-day events in addition to the Connectathons, and in particular trying to find out, what would you be interested in testing? Where are you interested in testing? Are you in Adelaide? Are you in Hobart? Are you in Alice Springs? You know, and trying to situate that to the community and where the needs are, basically. So that's a large part of what this early EOI is. It's not a commitment to test. It's trying to gauge if there is any interest in additional testing events, at what periods of time and where, and what would you want to test. And that will help us go out and kind of do some planning for later this year. And that's what that is. So I really encourage everyone who's interested in these FHIR specifications to respond to this EOI. Okay, I think now that it's sharing, you can go to the other ones.
To express the UI, or is the QR code? All right, cool. All right, so that's that one. All right, any other updates? No, okay, all right. Next item will be HL7 AU operational process. Anyone?
Oh, no, that's Brett.
That's Brett.
Which one?
Is that work?
Hello.
Oh, yeah.
I'm slightly underprepared, but there is a link. So I just wanted to. We're going to talk about PSSs today, so I thought it'd be worth hitting that link and going to look at the project scope statement governance page.
Interesting. It's just very jumpy.
Doesn't want to do it. Yeah, so as part of project management within HL7 and HL7 Australia, there is a step in the project work called a project scopes statement, and that requires acceptance by a governing work group. So the project scope statement is covering the planned changes and updates for a particular project, and that's typically associated with a specific release and a planned kind of timeline attached to that release. So the idea here is we have a project that's already been approved to exist. And what we're doing now is saying we intend to do a piece of work, we intend to have a release, and the scope of the work is to be defined. That brings up more detail in terms of who's involved, who are the stakeholders, what the plan is, and essentially that for the FHIR Work Group, we need to kind of look at that as is that a suitable scope in terms of the plan that's being presented? Is there any impediment to that being achieved? And are we happy that the project proceeds? So primarily it's really a checkpoint to make sure that there's enough resources and we think the groups and the activity can continue. So we're going to get to look at a couple of those today. once that's kind of covered by the FHIR Work Group and the approvals have been minuted, that does go to the board for a final approval. That is really more of a rubber stamp unless there's a major kind of IP governance organizational problem. The board will approve the work. So that's pretty much all there is to say about that. And I think we can go on.
Any questions from the group? Or anyone online has any questions? All right. So just be clear, Brett. So we have the process being that we have the project proposal first, and then followed by the project scope statement. And both of them has to be approved, the sponsoring work group with a possibly co-sponsoring if that's appropriate.
Yep.
And then once the work group approved it, and then it goes to the board for discussions and final approval.
Yeah, correct. And effectively, that's just it means that we know that this particular scope of work is now on the work program and people can proceed to manage that. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. And in the meeting minutes, there's a link to this page if anyone wants to have more detailed review of the process. All right. Without any other questions, then we launch into perfect examples of illustrating that. So the first one is the R2 PSS.
No pressure. Good. Excellent. Right. So PSS. Brett's given a talk. A bunch of you have been here before. Some of you haven't, which is actually amazing. We're trying to build and expand how does FHIR and how does standards work in Australia. And as we kind of ran through, a PSS or a project scope statement is sort of a key part of that. And for every kind of release, whether that's a FHIR IG or some kind of technical project, those things come through the FHIR Work Group. And they come through as proposals to say, there's a reason to do work on this. There's a reason to do some kind of release around this information. And we've got some deadlines. And that's really what the PSS, from my perspective, as someone who's submitting it, says. And then from the FHIR Work Group, of course, we've just run through that governance perspective of going, well, we're going to look at that and make sure it hits all those requirements of being conformant to HL7 AU standards and international standards. And then from the board, they look at, is this reasonable? Can we actually support this as it goes through a balloting and publication cycle? And that's really what a project scope statement allows. So I'm going to show you two, and I'm going to show you AU Corps R2 scope statement, and I'm going to show you the patient summary scope statement, and I'm going to put these forward for approval. So in terms of AU Corps, the project proposal has been approved and the R1 has been approved. I am not, in this case, proposing any changes to the title or description or the need of AU Corps. So I'm going to skip past those unless there's that people want to raise, and I'm going to go straight to the scope area. And in terms of R2, so I'll do a bit of background here. In terms of looking at the scope, we held a big scoping workshop for AU Corps in December. We invited the community. We held it at the Melbourne Connectathon to understand what should we focus on from an R2 perspective. What do people need to do? What are the drivers? and also look at in terms of what are the logical clinical requirements that we need to focus on, what are the downstream project needs, and what is in our deferred backlog. And also, I guess, in terms of community that hadn't even raised things yet, if people are looking to prioritise and progress things, what's out there, what do you need? So we did a whole workshop on that. Out of that came a few things. And they're in this scope statement. So this has been ratified and agreed through the AU Core Technical Design Group that that's what we're going to focus on, which is why it's documented and brought here to be, I guess, looked at from a governance perspective on is that acceptable. So R2 for AU Core is looking at a maintenance release. And it's looking at the maintenance release and it's going to focus on a few things. And those few things are supporting the downstream projects. So patient summary and e-requesting are currently active. There might be new active projects coming, but right now it's patient summary and it's e-requesting. And AU Core, which is meant to go across, all use cases, all healthcare settings, is prepared to support any requests coming from those projects. And that will continue throughout the R2 life cycle. We're also going to increase our coverage of AU CDI. So AU Core R1 had a really high percentage of coverage of AU CDI R1, but it wasn't 100%. For various reasons that are documented in minutes and also in the IG itself, we did not cover the medication use statement data group. We looked at medication request as a profile instead. And the agreement out of the scoping workshop is now to pick that up and to actually work through that in R2. And I think we'll also look at a number of other items, though I think there was a high degree of contention about what that would be. So it's at least medication use statement. It may be other things depending on the downstream project needs. And of course, enhancing our existing AU Core R1 content. We're expecting to see that now that AU Core R1 is published, in terms of implementation, there's a number of people who are signalled that they are actually going to go to production this year that will actually implement AU Core. And we are expecting to see a bunch of feedback from that and also the downstream projects indicating things where we need to refine that, where either AU Core is maybe missing something or maybe where it's been overly prescriptive. And so the focus, I think, from R2 is both to continue to increase the coverage of AUCDI, our clinical design group, set of focused requirements, to mature the content we've already agreed and also to support the downstream projects. Out of that have been identified 2 new profiles. That was also in December last year. So that's going to be AU Core related person, which enables, I guess, a set of minimum conformance requirements that support, I guess, family members, the ability for a whole number of different use cases now that aren't just provider-patient relationships to be supported. So that's key, and I'm really glad that's coming in and that was quite supported. And also medication statement as a resource, again, picking that up from completing that kind of focus, largely, I think, driven by patient summary around the really high-focused medication kind of use cases. So they're the 2 definites. There are some other things coming through. I think we already talked about the fact that the agency is key for healthcare service to come in. And so though that bullet point for others is that driven by community cases where the community can raise and can bring up during all the fortnightly meetings to say, hey, we've got a need, and this need is actually fairly significant for the sector to add in a profile for AU Core R2. But either way, that's the projected scope. It's a maintenance release, but it's going to support the community needs, refine based on implementation, I guess, guidance, what R1 is doing, and look at supporting e-requesting and patient summary. I'll pause here before I go on to say, are there any questions about that?
Yes, Michael.
So, is this predicated on the formation of the harmonisation group with AU-CDI? So having that group set up before we can look at what elements we're going to look at?
It's not predicated on the fact. The harmonisation group is an evolution of the ways of working. The way we've worked all along is about supporting. Actually, I'll change the wording there from supporting, because that means a thing in FHIR, to saying that the way that AU Core is set up, and this is an AU Core particular one, is that the clinical requirements are driven from the CDG. And so a lot of our meetings, in fact, I would say 75% of them, reference AU-CDI and talk through that. And we have a strong report back to that clinical group. The harmonisation group, which is something that we talked about in an AU Core TDG, but not a FHIR work group, I think a couple of meetings ago, was to indicate that in terms of the ways of working, that we were going to move from an in-principle approach to something that was more documented. There have been no concerns, as in there's been no issues raised about clarity or approach in terms of the relationship between AU Core and AU-CDI that haven't been talked through in meetings. It's probably disingenuous for me to say that there have been no concerns raised. Of course there have, both in AU-CDI meetings and in AU Core meetings, but we've spent quite a significant period of time, which I think is appropriate, actually talking that through. And even at the last face-to-face meeting in Adelaide, where we did a report back where we talked about which things are mapped, which things aren't, and why. So I view what's coming in terms of, and I guess that's a preview, in that Sparked is expecting there to be this thing called a harmonisation group, which I don't think has ever been mentioned before, and that's being looked at as one of the next steps in evolution of this relationship in ways of working, to go beyond the fact that we are working together and it's in a tacit way into a documented form, and maybe having a group that sits above this, that is a harmonisation group that meets, that kind of looks at that in an Australian form, so that in many ways, I think there's an early sort of terms of reference that's being formed and some of that content, so we can see more of that coming later. But I don't think it's a prerequisite for any decisions we make. It's more just the next step in making a BAU of what we've been doing.
Has any other questions? Those online? All right, so before we make a motion for the proposal, Daniel, if you can go back to the scope, the bullet points, there's a point that I want to mention. The final bullet point on that page was others as raised by community. So I think that's a very interesting sort of thing to consider. I think from the project management perspectives, I think we need to be working from getting the sort of a timeline for the ballot and working backward as to when we need to put a stop on that. So therefore, we have enough time to get the work done before we push out push it out for ballot. What I'm trying to say is that the final bullet point is not a blank check for everything until sort of the drop that day. So that's sort of something that I want to highlight for attention. Okay, with that sort of done, do you want to do the two at the same time, or you want to do
I'll
one by
just
one?
really quickly run through the other points
Okay.
here, which will be no surprise to everybody, I hope. And then I'll motion this one, and then we'll go on to the patient summary
Okay.
one.
Great.
So moving past scope, which nobody had any questions about, either because you've been forced to be all the meetings up to this point and therefore know exactly what we're doing in R2, or you're new and go, yeah, that makes sense. That's fine. Both are great. The other thing in terms of a PSS, is to provide some metadata. So what we're working on is a FHIR AG for AU Core. Here, because it's not the first, this is R2. So we're updating an existing one. That's what that says. Lineage, for those of you who don't know, is to indicate what you're replacing. So in this case, R1 was published as 100. So that's why we're saying our lineage here for R2 is AU Core 100. That's why that's there. It's not our expected publication version, it's the version we're replacing. We're intending to publish as a working standard. For those of you who haven't been through the HL7 AU journey around this, that's the equivalent of STU or standard for trial use. So it's a working standard, it's not normative, it's something that is out in the industry and is being worked through, but it's not in a state where it can't be backwards, that we can't change things and be backwards incompatible at this point. And we're intending to publish in January 2026. So this is the 12 monthly cycle. We published R1 in January 25, and we're intending to do a maintenance release that lands us in January 26. That's the plan, going back to what Stephen was talking about here, that we are intending to feed in the development and the implementation content and any new needs and publish a maintenance cycle that enhances R1 within that yearly cycle. That's the goal. The project team is boring. It's the same ones that always exist for AU Core. That's me and Brett and a few other people. Sparked is made up of 4 organizations. That's why we've got those 4 there. What else is interesting? I don't think anything's particularly interesting. I'll just confirm dependencies. It'll be whatever AU base is published against. I've taken a guess that's 5.2. I reckon it's actually probably 5.3, but we don't know, right? So it'll be the current AU base. That's what we're going to depend on. We're publishing against FHIR R4, and AU CDI R2 is our expected AU CDI dependency. That won't be published until June, but it's still our expected dependency. The rest of it is exactly the same and thus incredibly boring. None of that has changed. So, question from Heath.
Sorry, I got 2 questions. I can't remember the first one, but the second one is MBS. We've had conversation about PBS, MBS codes and things like that. MBS something that we are pursuing in this, and should that be on that list?
In AU Core?
Yeah.
No, it's not been raised. It's only been raised
Well,
in
it has been
base.
through Zilla, so there has been conversations.
Not in core perspective.
Okay. All right.
Well, MBS only comes through in a couple of places. 1, explanation of benefit, which is not in core. 2, procedure, noting that MBS itself as a code system and value set is not anywhere in base yet.
Yeah, but we have been having some discussions around, I think it's this committee, So Marika, I see you took went off mute. I'm hoping you were going to chip
Yeah.
in.
I was going to say it's definitely been in this committee, but I've been raising that in base, and we've been working through that in base. I was under the impression that we would have the value set and the code system hopefully published in base, and then it will be one of those things that we can just refer to base to use rather than housing in core.
Thank you. Too many committees. Can you just scroll back up? There was something there that caught my eye. Yeah, I think so. Where are the release types defined? Are they in our AFFC or something or other? Like, why are we using working standard instead of STU?
The answer is because Graham had a very persuasive argument to HL7 AU, and I was there and I was very persuaded that working standard is a much more meaningful way to describe something instead of standard for trial use, because something is working and it's out in the community. Okay, honestly, you need to listen to Graham to understand why it is such a brilliant term. But he'd put that forwards in international, and either way, it is part of the HL7 AU governance definitions. So it's not a me thing, it's a HL7 AU governance thing.
Yeah, so it is documented somewhere there.
It is.
I'd just like to make a note that this approval of this Spec 2 also implies that we will probably need to do a PSS and a plan for AU base to be released as well, because I expect we won't be able to go ahead. So I think that's just a potential implication, not a precondition for accepting this. It's a consequence. Yeah.
I would like to say that I think more than imply, and I think that's been documented in our minutes, that there's a requirement for an AU-based PSS to be submitted. I do agree that it's not a precondition for approving this, but I think we're all expecting an AU-based PSS to be submitted imminently.
Just to follow up, because like until the work actually happens, we don't know if we need to do one technically, right? So it's we expect we will, and it's very likely we will. However, I also think it's good form if these specs are going to ballot. We should be prepared to be things will be referred to the FHIR Work Group, and we will need to make a release. So it's I think I pretty much think we will do that, but yeah, I don't think I think it'll work this way around, which is these projects just decide that they want to do their work, and consequently AU base will need attention. Yeah.
So I had to prefix that I'm in favour of governance, but not over governance. It feels like we're getting ourselves into a maintenance nightmare here. When you start talking about AU base, for me, it's an ongoing project. I also kind of think that AU core is a little bit as well. And I wonder why we need to continue to have a new PSS every time we do a new release. It just seems over governance to me.
I can put my co-chair hat on instead of my sparked hat and respond to that, to state that we could discuss a standing agreement, and I think that would apply to base. I don't think that applies to core. There are a few reasons I don't think that applies to core. In terms of the expectation we all have in where we understand the work program from the agency from national infrastructure and where and how that might come in. And that when I've presented this PSS, I've talked about this is a maintenance release, but there's new profiles. But future releases might actually be massively backwards incompatible for various reasons. Base, however, is, I think, quite appropriate for some sort of standing agreement that we don't maybe need to come back for every PSS. Yeah.
And I think I agree with that. And I guess that's a matter of where do we draw the line? And I think new resource types is probably a very good example of where AU Core probably does deserve to be a new PSS, whilst the AU base just being an ongoing maintenance thing, not requiring PSS for every little release we do.
Is there a way we could note in the minutes this as a future topic around maintenance of different specifications and different specification types? I mean, I don't think it's more of a future kind of architecture and management, product management discussion across HL7 AU. Because I am keen to get AU Core and PSS discussed and agreed today. We've still got enough time, but I do want to come back to what you've raised, I think, in future.
I just think whilst this is pretty formal, what it does do is puts on paper what the intended scope was, so we don't get massive divergence from that. And yeah, it's a bit of a big, slow moving, not that agile approach, but I think there's scope within the definitions to kind of manage that for releases. So I think part of it's really just it's also communicating the mission of the group so that people outside that aren't involved day to day can see it as well. And yeah, so I definitely get the point with AU Base, but I think also AU Base has the same some of the same concerns where it's not just supporting things downstream. There are other things happening in AU Base as well, and we kind of probably need to think about how we define that. Yeah. Anyway.
So I would like to motion approval of the AU Core PSS for R2.
All right, okay. Daniel, have a motion on the table. Anyone who want to second that motion?
Jane, I'm happy to second on the phone.
All right, thank you, Jane. All right, so we have a motion. We have.
I need to menti. Crap. Hang on.
All right. So before we launch to the voting, are there any further questions and discussions before we launch the vote? All right. Hearing none, then we can start voting. How many do we have online?
I think that makes, oh, crap, I need to vote. Hang on.
Well, I just want to see whether or not we have passed the threshold. 13 voting members.
Oh, we've got 12 already.
So how many do we have online? We've got 16. So if we got 16, we've got 16 total. All right. So if we I'm just trying to gauge. So if we got 16 in total,
Some of the people online are also in the room, aren't they?
okay,
Yeah.
so if we have 16, then we have now we have 14 affirmative so far. All right, and 0 negative, 0 abstain. So we're going to give a 5-second to countdown to stop. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, we are done with the vote is frozen. So we have 14 affirmative, 0 abstain, 0 negative. So motion carried. All done. Okay, next one.
Thanks, everybody. You're right. Next one is, let me go find it.
AU patient summary.
It is, the link's wrong because, yay, I'll fix that later. Okay, so patient summary. So unlike, okay, honestly, just checking, can people online still see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. Is that big enough for you? Let me just get to more text. Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay. So this is the scope statement. The project proposal's already been approved, which is to say the title of the project, the description, the need, that's already happened. We're not proposing changing that. If anyone wants to re-prosecute those, you could now. You don't have to, but you could. So this is about the patient summary FHIR IG. And this is the first release of it in Australia. Unlike AU Core, which has gone through that cycle, it's already published in R1. We just looked at in R2, which was really like, what's the difference? Why are we working on extra things? From an R1 perspective, there's been a lot of work that's gone on over quite a period of time, actually, on why would we even do an Australian patient summary. That in and of itself was packed into the project proposal, so I won't refresh that here. But what I will talk about is what's proposed to be delivered in the scope of R1, basically. That's what I'm going to talk about here. And so obviously, this is a FHIR IG. This is a FHIR IG we're going to propose to develop. We're going to test it. We're going to ballot it and we're going to publish it. The proposal is at working standard. That's what the R1 is proposed to be. As part of this work, we're going to look at identifying and defining some candidate implementation use cases. There's a whole bunch of work that's going on behind the scenes to keep going on that beyond R1. So as is called out in this bullet point, and for what I can see of a number of people online and a number of people in the room, where you've been there, we've been in the workshops, we're working through the different use cases, and with the clinical design group, or in specific, the clinical focus group that was developed specifically for patient summary, that has been taking through a number of consumer journeys and looking at prioritizing and building through the different steps. A lot of those are going to form the backlog, but some of those we're bringing through into R1. So that work is relatively progressed, actually, and later today there's a patient summary FHIR IG meeting that is going to continue to do work onto the use cases. That's the agenda for today's patient summary call. So moving beyond that bullet point, we're going to, in R1, identify, develop and prioritize what are the key data concepts, including terminology, um, including the interactions for standardizing patient summary and its generation and its exchange across multiple healthcare settings. That's kind of what's come out of those scoping workshops that we held in December about the key focus. That third bullet point is, yes, we're going to have an IG. Yes, it is going to be based on core and IPS. And we're going to continue to be informed by and comply with the relevant FHIR specs beyond IPS, beyond core. There's other things out there. There's US core, there's IPA, there's SNOMED, there's LOINC that we continue to have feed into our work and that we look at and we report back into. So that's a summary of R1. And I'd like to, brilliant. We've got a hand up here for whoever's manning the microphone, because we've been doing heaps of meetings and whole day workshops on what R1 is, and I've had a go at condensing it into this many words. So I'm not surprised we've got feedback.
So I don't know how much you want to get into wordsmithing this, but that one that you're on at the moment, that dot point, you say will use, but when you spoke to it, you use based on. And I'm just wondering whether will use is too constraining. I know we're probably likely to use, but just from a PSS perspective, whether it should be based on.
The current agreement is to be compliant with. I could update that language to be compliant with, noting that we could make a community decision to deviate from that. We don't, of course, know what IPS 200 will actually land on, because I guess, so looking at this scope,
I think that
some of this is proposed based on the dependencies. These dependencies are forward-looking. They're not current. They're the latest version of core, which we just looked at the PSS for the latest version of core, right? It's going to be developed to work with patient summary and support that. I'm not worried about it, but we're also looking at the latest version of IPS. That is a bit out of our scope. So at the moment, we are, based on all our discussions, committed to being compliant to the latest version of IPS, noting we don't know what that is. There may indeed be, though it's unlikely, a legitimate reason that Australia cannot fully comply with all IPS requirements when it gets published as 200. I think that's incredibly unlikely, though we don't know because it's not published yet.
Yeah,
Stephen.
from a language perspective, there are three styles of language. I think so. Yeah. From a language perspective, there are three types of language that we can use, comply with, based on, and use. I did, when Daniel sort of showed me this, I did think about it, but I think that in order, at this point in time, in order not to put ourselves in too tight a straitjacket, I think we probably leave the door open a bit, and that's my thought about it. It is, yeah.
certain terms. And go back to what you verbally expressed, and it was based on, because that's how you obviously naturally went to it.
Making a proposal.
But I do, even though I said the word based on, endorse the documented language here of the PSS that we'll use. And that is a continued discussion within the group on what that surfaces as. At the moment, that's surfacing as compliant.
Yeah, I think that's the intent. The intent is that we'll use, and that if that something happens, it may be different, but I think that's the intent.
So any questions? Have we seen any hands up from those online? Nope. All right. No further questions, no further discussions. Ready for motion.
I'll just run through the last bit of metadata. So
Okay.
confirming what I'd been presenting all along, it's new. This is R1. Proposing working standard, proposing this gets published June 2026. Same, boring. Down here is also kind of the same. It's sparked different organizations, the same need. In terms of dependencies, this list core, I've taken a guess, it'll be published at 1.2. I think it'll be published at 1.3, but we don't know. It'll be the latest version of core, which will pick up the latest version of base. It'll be IPS 200. That is currently projected from the conversations we've had with the patient care group to be published within our necessary timeframes to be used. That's our expectation. And FHIR 4 and AU CDI R2. Down here, and I just want to draw the FHIR Work Group's attention to it, there was a big discussion on this, is it greater than 50% of external content? There's been some follow-up provided from Brett, thank you very much, with his HL7 hat on, that has indicated that that field is meant to be populated where your IG contains greater than 50% of content outside of HL7, basically. So outside of HL7's sphere. Now, AU patient summary will indeed be largely dictated by IPS and AU core, but because those are within either HL7 International or HL7 AU, they don't count for this PSS's perspective as external content. And that would be great to note in the minutes. Michael.
How do you quantify that percentage?
At the moment, based on our projected set of artifacts, which we have almost 90% of them, and what makes them up, and we looked at the percentage, that's how we make it up. I looked at that for core and for base. And so I would say for a profile and all its rules, and if I count each element and each rule as a thing, which we do from a testing perspective, and I look at the percentage, it's much less than 50% that is external.
From an instance perspective or profile?
Both.
Both.
Like outside of HL7, because FHIR standard doesn't count, that's internal. So anything that is FHIR, IPS, AU core, or AU base is considered internal. So it's anything that's outside of base, the FHIR standard, core, or IPS, which is not much, to be honest, that we're talking about. There's a bit that is SNOMED or LOIC, but it's not greater than 50%. Yeah, exactly, but it's still not greater than 50%.
But we've explicitly stated those external terminologies, and
We
so
have.
are they actually included in under this external content, or is that explicitly stated managed elsewhere?
I counted them in terms of the greater than 50% external content.
I really. No, yeah.
Sorry, Danielle, we've lost your audio online.
Yeah, I didn't use the microphone. That was bad on me. Thanks, Marika. Hey, so if you'd like to put forward a proposal for an objective quantified basis by which we count that, I would love to debate it and look forward to it. So if we could have an action on Heath to identify that, that would be wonderful.
Action. Do you accept this action? No, my point, I think the intent of this element, and this is inherited from HL7 International architectural review board is more intended about published content and IP concerns. It's about like, am I using other people's standards content, or is it in the control of something outside HL7? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's all about IPs. Yesterday when I looked at this with Daniel, I overlooked the outside of HL7. I totally blinded to that. So that's the reason why I thought that it would be yes. But yes, I recall that in our HL7 international discussions, so we talk about IPs from other external standards like ISO, IG, etc., that we need to acknowledge. And I think from what I recollect, SNOMED International has an agreement with HL7 International for it to use its content. So for most of the HL7 International PSS that we look at, none of them actually have exceeding 50% of external content. So I think we are pretty safe here in saying no.
And I mean, I just think you're being like per value set, because that's arguably HL7 IP when we're actually value setting something, whereas NOMED, the underlying terminology, that's definitely external. But so I think even the current method is probably being overly cautious. But
Yeah, I mean, not all value sets are HL7, but some are. You're right. Yeah.
Really would like us to have morning tea as well. I think too, it's what you are publishing in this specification, not what you depend on. Like it's like, because you are not publishing SNOMED, right? You are not publishing that content. You're using it, and you're also using these other specs. So even if we are using AU Core and FHIR, I mean that is not what you're publishing in this particular artifact, right? You're depending on it. So like, as a assessment of content, you have only published what you publish in the IG, right? So just because you reference something doesn't mean you've published it, right? It's so I think we need to, like, I don't think you need to concern yourself with that, because you need to say how you relate to other things as part of the IG anyway, right? So yeah, you don't own that content, and you don't need to. You're just depending on it.
sorry, I'm happy for you to move on if you want to stop this, but AUCDI would be classed as external, and that's significant. Probably not so much in this one, but more the previous
But it's not
one.
our actual, it's requirements, not the actual content. So it doesn't make up the actual IG itself. So it doesn't count.
Yeah, so that one page of defining all those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do agree it's external, but because it's not forming.
External content.
Yeah, I agree. It is. Yeah.
But as Brett said, we are not publishing AUCDI. We are informed by AUCDI.
I would like to make a motion that we accept this proposal.
Josh? Okay, we have a seconder. Any further questions or comments?
I should mention.
All right, if not, then let's launch a vote.
Is this the FHIR Work Group? It is the FHIR Work Group team. Yay. Okay. Woohoo. Okay.
All right, voting starts. So you can vote affirmative, negative, or abstain. Come on, we have to do better than that.
Oh no. Getting there. Do people need the QR code? I can pop that up again. Here we go.
I can't vote, but Daniel can. All right, we have 14.
All right.
Okay, all right. So I think we are good. So motion carried. Thank you, everyone.
Righto. I can, I think that's the end of my standing up here. I think it's back to you.
Okay, so what's our...
Yeah, I opened so many tabs. I think we're on this one. Sorry.
Yeah, we should be on that one.
Yeah.
All right. So next meeting plan is our next agenda item. Yes, we had. Yeah. So we skip next week, right? And then the week after, so which is Wednesday, the week after next. No, the third, no, the second. No? All right.
Exactly. So we're actually after. Yeah, hang on. Sorry, go another a bit forward, another month forward in this calendar. So maybe scroll up and then go forward a month. Out of March into May. Oh, yeah, April. Sorry. Okay, I'm really bad at months. Like I'm really awful at time zones. So we can just ignore me when I announce month names. Okay, so it's the 9th is our next one. Can we confirm we want to keep that time? And hang on, this is my calendar. So you probably don't want to look at my calendar because I'm Brisbane. So that's on different times to everybody else. True, but I guess every time we shift from either into or out of daylight savings, we make sure to confirm that we're happy to keep or either. You're on 11. Okay. So it's going to stay 11. It'll be 11 on for me. Okay, cool. Great. I think it's just confirming that it is a time change for people who are in Queensland / is there another state that doesn't do daylight savings? Northern Territory. Okay, WA. Right. Okay. Okay. Yep.
So in the 9th of April, 11 a.m. Eastern time. All right, we are all good?
Yep.
All right, with that, I think we are done with all the meeting items today. All right, we'll entertain them. Okay, something else?
Yeah, finally, our next meeting is talking about we're actually going to work on an AU base. That's the whole point of the 9th of April one, is to get people to come to that meeting to say, here are the changes I want in base. That's the projected agenda for it. Basically, it's a scoping kind of discussion about base. It is. Open Slather, we've posted an announcement on Zulip to say, hey, we're going to be having that discussion. Come along if you've got anything. And if you can't come to that meeting, post it on the Zulip chat as well, and we'll look at the Zulip chat and bring it in. But yeah, it's open slather.
With that, we can adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone, for those of you who are here in the room, and especially for those of you who are online. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Yes, bye.